And so those who have already attended my lecture before, so for them, this is going to be a little bit of a repetition, but those who have not attended it, they should stick around. And for them who have already attended, come back in the maybe in the second half of it, because that is when there are a few more slides and sort of important considerations for IP management of startups. So that is where you would want to come back for it. So, and I'll also request anytime you feel like if there's any burning question you want to ask, please feel free to ask. And otherwise, also, we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this. So, okay, so Manveen, are we good to go?
Yeah, sure.
And
We are
I
good to
hope
go.
the voice.
Sorry, Sneha, your voice is breaking. Can you hear me?
FDG So the challenge is that research converts money into knowledge, but it is innovation that converts that knowledge back into money. So we have been busy doing the first for a long time now, not the second. And also recently, the message by Prime Minister was very clear that Atmanirbhar Bharat is something which we can achieve only with tech innovation and sort of having sustainable startups. That is the need of the day. So with that thought in mind, let's start. Uh, Basically, what is IP? IP is essentially the creations of human mind, and it is intangible property. So it is something which is not tangible, but at the same time, it gives you a negative right. Okay, it gives you a right to stop others from using the creations which you have made, and at the same time, it allows you to gain monetarily from that creation of your mind. Okay, so essentially, it covers all the inventions, literary, artistic works, symbols, names, images, designs, and use those which are used specifically for commercial benefits or in commerce. So just to give you a fair idea of how IP or intangible property is different from tangible property, it is something which has very definite amount of period assigned to it. So basically, this is a risk reward sort of relationship wherein you disclose something which you have created to the entire public, and in return, you would get a monopoly for certain number of years upon for using that for your own commercial gains. Okay, so the use can be either to stop others from making or using it, and or it could be to sell it, license off your IP, or in US you also get loans based on your IP assets. Okay, in India we are not there yet, but IP is something which could be mortgaged, and of course it can be handed down to your generations to come. So it could be a gift as well. Okay, there are different time periods for each kind of IP. So patents, for example, would be only 20 years of life. Okay, whereas tangible property, as we all know, is something which is indefinite. So different types of IP. Quickly to recap, I think most of you would be aware of what are the sort of intellectual property rights that you could register for your startups. Basic to start off with would be patents, which would be for your inventions, trademarks for the company logos or for the taglines which you're using, copyrights for all the marketing materials which you might be using, or even for your softwares or algorithms which run underneath your business models. Industrial designs, if there's some aesthetic improvements which you have done, that could be registered, or geographical indications. So those working closely in the Himalayan region with the bioresources, geographical indication is something which you could keep in mind. Trade secret is again something which is the know-how of your company, your startup. It is going to be something which you do not reveal, but at the same time, it adds to the value of your company. So it is a asset. IC design layout is separately covered as an intellectual property right, and various plant varieties are again protected. So let's start with the most important or most sort of relevant form of intellectual property right, which is a patent.
Sneha, sorry to disturb
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Sorry to
please,
interrupt you in
please.
between. Can you be a little bit louder? I think some of the startups are mentioning that voice is little low.
Okay, so let me just see if there's a volume increase option over
Yeah.
here. Oh, okay, my computer sound was low. Is this better now?
Yeah, now it's perfect.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay, great. So shall I recap for you or have you all followed? Can you just quickly let me know, Manveen?
I think we are good to go as you are going to start
Okay,
with the thing. So yeah, it's fine.
okay, perfect. So first, most important IP right is patent. So patent is a negative right which is granted by government of each country, and it is essentially to exclude others from using your invention. So you could be using it either for sale or for manufacturing, importing, and for a limited period of time, you would get that monopoly in the country where the patent has been granted. So in India, you have got patents such as product patents, process patents, systems can be patented. Okay, different sort of microorganisms which have with would necessarily be patentable. Okay, so we call it the none test. Basically, it is novelty, utility, and non-obviousness of your invention.
Sneha, if you can repeat the last slide, I think your voice got broken in between. It got broke. So if you
Okay,
can,
sure. So you want me to
yeah,
go slow? Is it too fast?
yeah. No, it's not too. The speed is fine. The only thing is, I think there was some issue with the voice.
Okay, okay, fine. So basically, patents are so they are the rights which are granted by the government to an inventor to exclude others from making, using, offering for sale your invention or importing it. So basically, you are a creator of an invention, and it is a negative right which stops others from using your invention for a limited period of time. So it is sort of a risk-reward relationship or arrangement wherein you are supposed to take the risks in developing the invention and then disclose it to the public. But in return for your disclosure of complete disclosure to the public, the government will grant you a monopoly.
Sneha, I think again there is some issue with the voice.
A patent for a system. But plant utility design patents per se are not available in India. They are allowed in United States. Okay, Manveen, is that clear now?
Yeah, I think voice got broken in between. It got breakdown. Some issue, I think, with the maybe internet or
I think the net is fine. I've got like good connectivity. Let me just maybe shall I'll try to reconnect. Okay.
yeah, sure. If you can reconnect again. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just reconnect. One minute.
Hi everyone. So everybody is facing the same issue, or that is me who is facing this issue regarding the voice.
I'm facing it all the while. This is Amuta Manvi. I'm facing
Okay.
it all the while. Guess it's across the board.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay, fine. Sure, got it.
Yeah. Hi, you guys. Can you hear me now better?
Yes, Neha, it's fine now.
Okay, perfect. So whenever it gets a little bit lagged or blurred, let me know, and we'll
Yes,
again
so
start.
actually in between, actually voice get disappears and appears. So some little bit issue.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but connectivity is fine from my end. But anyways, we'll rejoin. Let me know.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. So, moving on, the criteria of patentability is novelty, utility, and non-obviousness. So, a patent is judged upon these three parameters. When I speak of novelty, it has to be in a global sense, okay, in a global context, as in, even if you're filing a patent in India, anything which has sort of been published all around the world could be held as a prior art to your invention. Okay, so any published literature which sort of anticipates your invention in entirety, novelty is called as a prior art. Utility is something which most of the systems that we develop do have. So industrial application is something which is the easiest of the parameters. Non-obviousness. So let's consider a person who's skilled in the art, who's your peer. If he is given the patent applications, sort of the prior arts which are available, and if he thinks that this is something which is not very common, which is not sort of obvious improvement or addition to the state of art, then your patent application or your invention could be considered as non-obvious. Okay, so that is something which is sort of a perspective based on what the person skilled in the art would consider as obvious or non-obvious. Okay, so certain inventions by the Act, the Patent Act 1970, are considered non-patentable. So anything which is frivolous or contrary to well-established natural laws, anything which is contrary to public order or morality would also be non-patentable. Living, non-living substances, of course, which are available or occurring in nature. And section 3D is important, especially for pharmaceutical substances, because just mere discovery of any new property or a new form of a known substance, or even just a new use of a known substance, okay, that is something which is not patentable in India. Also, mere admixture resulting in aggregation of properties or mere compounds which you have obtained formulations just by mixing together components would not be considered patentable. Again, mere rearrangement or arrangement of known components and known devices is not patentable. Method of agriculture, horticulture, plants, animals in whole, except microorganisms and microbiological processes. And any processes for medicinal, surgical, curative, diagnostic, treatment of human beings, animals would also not be patentable. Mathematical or business methods, algorithms per se, the softwares which you develop for your systems, they're not patentable in India, but you could sort of get a copyright if you wish to for it. Okay. Apart from that, so any literary, dramatic, musical, artistic work is covered by copyright. So that also is not patentable. Topography of integrated circuits is again covered by the IC Design Layout Act. So it is not patentable per se under the Patent Act. And anything which in effect is traditional knowledge. So you may have heard of the Haldi patent which got revoked because essentially in US, the use of Haldi, turmeric, for wound healing properties was something which they had patented. But because it is a traditional knowledge which generations of Indians have used to cure wounds, that was considered as traditional knowledge, hence not patentable. Okay, and also inventions which are related to atomic energy. So moving on to the simple procedure of filing any patent in India or abroad, basic process remains the same. So once you have an invention, you sort of have scoped out what is the working details of it. So you have a working concept and you have understood, okay, these are the building blocks which are essential for my invention to work. It may not be a prototype, it may not be sort of something which you have completely figured out. That is fine. As long as it is a concept with one example embodiment, you can go ahead, you can consider it as your invention and go ahead and file a patent provided the prior art search patentability report is favorable for it. Okay, so prior art search can be done either it could be a literary search or a non-literary, such as patent literature search, which can be done and sort of to assess using the NUN criteria, the patentability test, whether your invention is something which a patent can be filed upon. Once you decide, okay, this is something which can be filed as a patent application, we move on to the drafting stage. So patent drafting can be carried out by a patent attorney, or you yourself can also draft the complete specification, provisional specification. And then filing can be either done online or it can be done through the paper route through the patent offices of your respective jurisdictions. So in India, there are 4 patent offices which are divided as per the regions, and few states which come under that jurisdiction. For example, Himachal Pradesh would come under Delhi Patent Office. So all your filings, if your address of work is Himachal Pradesh, then all the filings go to Delhi Patent Office. So moving on, we'll quickly go through all other forms of IP and then again come back to some basic important considerations specifically related to patents.
Sneha, your voice is breaking again.
Okay.
Sneha, sorry to interrupt you. Your voice is breaking.
Yeah, got it, Manveen. Is it better now?
Yeah, now it's fine. Yeah, now it's fine.
Okay, maybe I need to hold the mic. Fine. So let me know again if it breaks, and I'll maybe again join again. Yeah.
Sure. No, it's fine.
Okay, great. So trademarks are basically distinctive signs, brand logos, which you have seen, and you associated certain goods and their quality with those particular signs, distinctive signs which are used to identify certain goods. Okay, also services by different producers or by a specific person or enterprise. So some quick examples of trademarks, maybe you can consider for your startups, registration of the names, logos. It could be a combination of words, letters, numerals, as in these examples. Or it could be a drawing, symbol, a three-dimensional sign. For example, the three-pointed star. Or it could be even the jaguar, leaping jaguar of the car. So it could also be a audible sign, such as a music or a vocal sound. You must have heard the firing of a bullet. Okay, so a bullet bike essentially has a very distinctive firing sound. So that is something which has been trademarked. And also the MGM Gold Lion, which we have all heard roar. So that is also a trademark of MGM company. And moving on, so trademark, of course, there are other trademarks also which could be registered, just not just the simple name logo. It could be a specific shade of a color which you associated with some company. So, for example, when you think of Cadbury, that purple colored wrapping comes to your mind. Okay, so that purple shade has been used by Cadbury as their trademark. Okay, and so these are also some things which you could consider to sort of identify, give you that distinction over the products of the competitors. Geographical indication. Geographical indication is essentially a sign which is used on goods which have come from a specific geographical area. Okay, and they possess qualities or sort of reputation, characteristics, skills which are essentially attributed only to that place of origin. So, for example, you must have heard of Nagpur oranges, Nashik grapes, or certain fabrics which are only available to some parts of India, and Darjeeling tea. These are all geographical indications. So what sets them apart is maybe the demographic has certain sets which they have been using to make those. So Kolhapuri chappals, for example, only a certain amount of people know how to make the essentially a Kolhapuri chappal. Okay, and so that is also distinctive GI. And any agricultural natural manufactured goods can be filed as a GI, and also it also lends to it certain amount of assurance of quality or distinctiveness. Okay, so it is very important if you're working with the local associations, and if you identify something which is a niche to that area where you're working on, you can always go for a geographical indication. So some of the GIs registered from Himachal Pradesh are Kulu shawl, Kangra tea, Chamba rumal, Kinnauri shawls, and many more. So moving on to industrial designs. Industrial design is another form of IP which is very important. Specifically, it goes hand in hand very well with patent applications and with patent registration. So let's assume you have sort of a product to which to make it more appealable to the consumers, you have added a aesthetic sort of improvement to it. But that has nothing to do with the functionality of your product. Okay, so anything, any design which may be a feature of shape, configuration, pattern, or sort of a ornamental composition which has been applied on top of the product which you are manufacturing either in 2D or 3D. Okay, and it just does not give any other functionality, does not impart a functional means to it, but just helps it in improving it ergonomically or from a usability point of view, or just for aesthetic purposes could be considered as a industrial design. Okay, and specifically for consumer goods, it's very important to have appealing products, good looking products. Okay, only then they would fly off the shelves. So examples of industrial design would be essentially these. If you look at it, the soap, essentially the function, the chemical composition, the formulation would be same in both these soaps. However, just by giving it a particular shape, they have made it more appealable to a certain class of consumers. Maybe for the small kids, they would want this duck shaped soap instead of the normal one. Similarly goes with the pen or the pen drive. They have been either improved ergonomically or from a usability point of view. Some of the registered industrial designs in India, just for you to understand what we are talking of, would be these. Now, copyrights. Copyright is something which I think is a lot in the news these days, specifically because the Bollywood and sort of the music industry, the artist community in India has become much more, so they have sort of become much more aware of copyrights and thus using it to their advantage. So it is basically a legal right which gives the creators of literary or artistic works certain rights such as moral or economic rights to protect their IP. So it would cover literary works, newspapers, articles, architectural plans, your computer programs, your softwares, databases, and also any performance acts or your business models. All those would be covered by copyrights. Trade secrets are another form of IP which are very important, which is something which every startup should keep in mind, that it is not always important to disclose everything that you have, because the reality of the situation today is that enforcement of IPR is very difficult. So if someone is actually infringing on a patent, it is going to be very difficult to go through the legal route to get injunction and stop others from making it, and sort of get commercial gains on a timely basis. Of course, it will be done. The legal system is slowly moving towards that side, but it is going to be something which would take time. So maybe keeping some sort of important things secret for your startup, the business models, your client sheets, your some secret ingredients which you're using, some process tweaks which you're using, those could be, instead of just disclosing everything in the patent application, it is better to keep certain things as trade secrets. So patent protection is also only limited for 20 years. So for a startup, if that is something which they do not want to disclose and do not want to go ahead with, it's always better to keep some things as trade secret. Also, cost of patent protection all over the world is prohibitive. In India, it is still okay, but if you go and file in each different country, the costs are a lot. So then also keeping certain things trade secret would be preferable. And of course, when your invention is not at all patentable or it is difficult to reverse engineer, it is something which you can think of. Okay, when I say the invention is not patentable, Coca Cola is a very well kept trade secret till now. And the reason it is because we are assuming that basically it is just a aggregation of certain known, so it is just a admixture. Okay, and it is not something which is patentable, and that is the reason why they have kept it as a secret for all this time. Trade dress is once your franchisee grows, once you have sort of created a brand image for yourself, And if you're into a sector which is sort of FMCG goods or something which is like a customer oriented service sector, then it is better to have sort of a trade race design for your entire branding and packaging of the company. Okay, MACD is a very good example for this. So now that we have understood the basics of IP, and so it is very clear that IP is something which surrounds us. It is all around us, and right from your shoes to your bikes to your phones, the food you eat, everything gets covered by IP in some form or the other. Okay, and especially like in these times, pharma patents also, everyone is fighting to get that COVID vaccine made as soon as possible. So of course there is a societal angle to it, but there is also this form of first to file, first to invent sort of war going on, which also needs because pharma is an industry which completely depends on extensive R&D. The amount of risk, the amount of investment is huge. So they need to totally depend on IP for protecting their for protecting their inventions. So let's sum up what are the benefits of IPR. And at this point of time, I think if going forward, we'll also be considering some important aspects for startups to consider while devising their IP strategy. Right from the time you have conceived of your startup, it is always good to have parallelly think about the IP and sort of decide in which direction you're going. Okay, because the benefits are many. It not only drives the economic growth, you would be surprised to know that America's IP is about 5.8 trillion US dollars. Okay, and so the IP assets worth is actually as much as the nominal GDP of a typical developing country. So that is a huge factor when your country is actually becoming a developed nation as compared to a developing nation. Again, I spoke about pharma patents. So, breakthrough solutions to global challenges is something almost 300 drugs of the top WHO list of drugs have been patented, and they are licensed to other countries wherein they are getting manufactured. Okay, needless to say, it creates and supports high paying jobs. It encourages the innovation by a risk reward sort of arrangement. It also, in these days, there's a lot of interaction between the academia and the industry. So there are a lot of new MOUs happening, joint research programs happening, sponsored research is going on. So for all these, it is very important to have sort of a clarity on who owns the IP which gets generated out of it. You're also receiving funding. There's licensing going on. The funding received also may have some impact on the IP which gets created. Okay, so these things are also something which you need to keep in mind. And at the same time, if you already have sort of IP assets created for your company, getting the next round of fundings becomes much more easier. Okay, and of course, strong enforcement of IPR protects the consumer interests. So if, let's suppose, there is a trademark which is associated with goods which you have created for your company and they are of the best quality available in India right now. Now, of course, if you have a trademark which is well known and everyone will associate that. So, so let's take an example of Apple iPhone. And as soon as I say iPhone, you know that there is a certain amount of quality assurance which is associated with it. And it also will protect the consumer interests needless to say, IPR also reflects upon your company's technology leadership, and you're also there's also good amount of peer review and intellectual acclaim which comes along with filing of intellectual property rights. So some important considerations now, Manveen, this part is new. So if there are few startups who have maybe already attended the first part of it, but if they would like to join in now, this would be a good time. Yeah.
Yes, so I think Sneha, there are already around 30-35 startups who are listening to you.
Okay, great. Sorry, I've not been able to look at that
Yeah.
screen. So
Not a problem, not
that's
an issue.
perfect. Yeah. So going ahead, this
Yeah.
part is something which would come in important for those who are again, revisiting this lecture. So important IPR considerations, what you would like to look at would be clarity on the ownership, IP filing strategies, your post-grant scenarios, and also knowing your product IP strategy. Now, when I say product IP, it is different from the IP filing strategy. Okay. Also ascertaining your FTO will also come to that. Developing non-infringing products right from the day one. Also, some funding schemes, reimbursement options which are available. I would also like to share those for your considerations. Okay. So let's sort of start with the basics. You decide you're going to file a patent. The first question which comes to mind is who is going to be the inventor, who is going to be the applicant on it. The difference between these two is that applicant is the one who owns the rights to the patent. Okay, so tomorrow, if I am the applicant named on your invention, and if a company comes to me and asks me to license the IP from this, so the applicant solely would have the right to transfer this IP to the company and not the other inventors who are named on it. The inventors and applicants could be the same also, but they could be different also. So especially in case of employment contracts, wherein you're working for a big research and development organization, the inventor essentially is not going to be the applicant for patents. So inventor is going to be the one who works in the R&D department, who has conceived this invention, who is working on improvements of it. But at the same time, the IP will be filed by the applicant in its own name. Okay. And the inventor, of course, could get some royalties if there is a contract or there's an understanding in place. Some amount of royalties will go back to the inventor, but the major chunk of the commercial success will be claimed by the applicant. Okay, assignee is something which is another aspect of in ownership. So once you have a patent assigned to someone else, you are essentially transferring the rights. So the applicant or the inventor, they're transferring their rights to the assignee. Okay, so the assignee would be the one who would have the rights to the patent, and the ownership will reside with them. So when you file a patent application, the applicant essentially is going to be one, but assignee during the life of patent could be multiple assignees. So I could take it from you, I could maybe pass it on to someone else and assign it further. So that way, the assignee is something which will go on changing. Inventors remain the same for most of the cases. Applicant also remains the same, unless there's of course some omission, which then can be changed. So these are the important aspects. You always need to know who is the inventor. Just to look at it, you could go by claim to claim analysis. So once you have drafted your specification, sit along with your patent attorney, look at each claim and sort of try to understand who has contributed to which claim. So either you could claim that inventor for specific claims, or you could name that inventor for all of your claims. In India, for now, it is not possible to claim wise name inventors, but in US, you can do that. Okay. And so inventors could be named accordingly. Anyone who has sort of helped in the conception of the invention is one who should be named as the inventor. Anyone who has just helped you in the reduction to practice. Okay, so reduction to practice, I mean that carry out some tests. Maybe you're giving them sort of a roadmap and then they are working on it to sort of achieve a certain end result, may not or need not be named as the inventors on the patent draft. So it is again a call which you can take as a startup, because essentially the IP which is going to be held by the startup is going to be something which could be an asset for your startup one day. Okay, so it's very important to have clarity on the ownership of it. Moving on, startups should always consider the ways of filing the patent. So it's always better to, once you have, like I said, once you have a conceived idea of what the invention constitutes, and you also have sort of in your head, in your mind, you have devised a working model of it. Okay, it need not be a prototype, but you know what is the working sort of building blocks to make this work. As long as you have those workable details, we can go ahead and file a provisional specification. Suppose you want more work to be done on it, the provisional specification further allows you one more year in which you can file a complete specification, claiming the priority of your provisional specification. So patent in India, anyone who has filed first or first to file will be considered to get priority in comparison to someone who has filed later. Okay, so anyone who has filed later than you, his patent application will not be a priority to yours. Okay, so that way it's always better to go and file a patent on the day which you have these working details in your hand. Okay, if you're ready with your invention, on the other hand, it's always better to file a complete specification because you have a clear idea of what you're going to file. Now, there are going to be certain improvements which you are going to do going ahead. Like maybe 2 years down the line, you find another application of it, or 2 years down the line, you think of another means of using this, making this more effective, or just improving and adding some more onto it. So all that can again be covered by a patent of addition on top of this. Okay, so this is for filing in India. Essentially, if you're a startup in India, you always need to file in India first, and then claiming priority, you can file in other countries. Okay, because this is a territorial right. Filing in India does not give you rights in other countries unless you follow it up with a national phase application in each of these countries. At the same time, it does give you a priority. So if you have filed in India today, using this priority date within the next 12 months, you can go to these individual countries, and let's say you want to file in Europe, you want to file in Russia, you want to file in Australia. So go ahead and file in these international territories within 12 months from the date of filing in India. So that is the conventional route. Now, conventional route is something which is very costly because you're going to be filing separately in each of these countries. You're going to be incurring the expenses right from the first year of filing in India. At the same time, these expenses are a lot because of the conversion rates. You also need to have a patent attorney in each of these countries. So conventional application route is something which is not at all advised for startups. Yes, okay.
Sneha, your voice
Let
is
me
breaking.
little better.
No, it's again
Okay, let
an
me
issue
join
with the
again.
voice.
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So there are two ways of filing this. It could either be online application or a paper-based application. So online application has certain benefits. There's a reduction in the amount of fee which needs to be given to the government office. So this is the way of choice for most of us to file these days. And we're moving on to national phase or PCT applications. Now, like I said, conventional application is something which is cost exorbitant. Okay, so it is going to be cost intensive, something which startups typically do not want to take at so early stage in their startup lifeline. Okay, so national phase through PCT is something which most of you would be going through if you wish to consider other territories as well as India. Okay, so PCT is basically a Paris Cooperation Treaty wherein you patent cooperation treaty where you get a chance to select 192 other countries to file a patent application based on a single application which you have filed in India. Now, the day on which you have filed a application in India, you get 12 more months to file a PCT application, and this single application will then allow you to wait for another 2 years or 3 years, depending on the countries, to sort of take a decision whether you want to file in these jurisdictions or not. So in total, you get a timeline of about 30 months in which you can decide if you wish to go to some of these countries and then file country specific applications for these countries. So once the international phase of this PCT application is over, so once those 30 months are over, you can then enter into national phase for all these separate countries as per your choice and as per the cost benefit analysis, which you may have a better picture of 30 months down the line as compared to taking a decision right away within 12 months of filing your IPA. Okay, so let's say you have clients in US and would like to start manufacturing over there. It is always better to go and file a national phase application in US pursuant to your Indian application. So that is a call which you can take. Now, post-grant scenario is something which many startups don't consider. So once, let's say you have a grant on your patent application, but it is not something you have moved on, the technology has moved on, and it is not something which you wish to maintain for the entire 20 years of its lifeline. That is fine. You can take a call to abandon that patent at any point in its lifeline. Okay. You can either practice the patent. So patent practice would of course mean you're manufacturing, you're selling the licensed patented technology in the country, outside the country. You could either assign it. So assignment essentially means that you have sold off your IP. So when you assign your invention to someone, you're essentially giving him all the rights to make, sell, manufacture that particular invention in the given jurisdiction. Whereas licensing is more like renting out your apartment. Okay, so license can be given for a limited period of time. Licensing just means that you're giving them rights to use it for maybe a specific application, or maybe use it for a certain amount of time, or for a certain geographic area. So licenses could be either exclusive licenses or it could be non-exclusive. So exclusive licenses essentially mean that it is more like a assignment wherein you're giving all the rights exclusively to a single party. Non-exclusive means that in addition to that one person, you could always give the same rights to additional 3, 4, 5 more licensees, even more. Okay, so it all depends on the terms of license. And there is also another license which is called as a solo license, wherein you would have the rights to manufacture it. At the same time, let's say I am in Maharashtra. So I have distribution channels, manufacturing capabilities over here, not necessarily in the northern part of India. So that is when I would give a solo license wherein that person could use it. Another person could manufacture, sell it in northern part of India, whereas I do it in the southern part of India. So that sort of a licensing could also be a possibility after the grant of your patent application. Defensive patenting is something which we have seen with IBM happening a lot. IBM just files left, right, center everywhere. And that is defensive because they are creating background IP for their own creations, which would improve upon those background IP. Okay, so many of these are filed such that they are not essentially something which they themselves intend to use or want to use, but just to stop others from venturing into that area of technological development. So that is something which is also an option. Having said that, in India, it is very important. Working of invention is something which is taken seriously by the patent office. So 3 years after the grant of patent, you need to be working out your patent. That is, you need to be manufacturing a certain amount of certain number of products using the product or the process which you have sort of patented. Now it is important to know your product IP strategy. So now we know the filing strategy, we have clarity on the ownership of your patent. Now you also need to know the product IP strategy. Let's say your product is a mobile phone. Okay, so there is a hardware component to it, there's a software component to it. So how would you go about protecting it? First, you would software all the copyright all the softwares. Okay, then you would also file patents for the hardware systems if it is something which is new, which you have developed. You would also protect all the improvements which you would be subsequently undertaking. At the same time, the industrial design. So shape of iPhone, if you have seen the curved edges, is something which there was a huge litigation which happened because Samsung also started using curved edges for its phones. Okay, and there was a huge monetary settlement which Samsung had to do because of using curved edges on their phone models. So that is something, the shape also was considered by Apple as a part of their IP or the product IP. Of course, the names, logos, they're all protected by trademarks. So infringing on those also is something which was not possible. You may also wish to consider, because a single form of IP is essentially not something which is going to give you a better coverage or complete protection for the product which you have designed. There's going to be a software component to it, there's going to be a hardware component to it, there's going to be something which will make it aesthetically appealing to a person who's using it. Okay, so all these sort of things you need to sort of identify and then go about it. So for example, this company which manufactures screwdriver, okay, essentially the functional ideas of it, okay, that tightening of the screws using the head, and there's going to be a grip, okay, all these would be something which could, a patent could possibly be filed upon. But for something which is so detachable heads, okay, essentially it is something which is improving it from a usability point of view. So instead of having just one head to it, we are now having multiple heads which can attach with different fixtures, so that you can use the same screwdriver for multiple applications. Okay, so that is something which they have filed a design right upon. So now, because they have both these rights hand in hand, the patent as well as the design rights, it gives them a much better IP coverage. So this is also something, and of course, establishing it as a brand. So if you know that in a market, there's only one company which comes out with these detachable heads for screwdrivers, and you know the name of that company, of course, the trademark is also something which gets value subsequently. So establishing brands is how you would be able to make the most of your combination IP. Moving on, freedom to operate is another consideration which I would like the startups to think about right from the start of your strategy. Essentially, freedom to operate is very difficult. I understand that, because no technology is like a breakthrough invention these days. Most of it is incremental and something which is based on the available technologies, and then some improvement by using sort of so a combination of the available technologies and integration to arrive at something which is going to have an industrial application. Okay, having said that, freedom to operate is very important when you start manufacturing it. So what does freedom to operate essentially mean? It means that you have the freedom to practice, manufacture and sell your invention without necessarily stepping on toes of other people's rights. Okay, so how do you ascertain that? So patent ownership essentially is not going to be something which guarantees that you also have a freedom to operate. There needs to be another in-depth study by you or by someone else who's qualified to do it, to understand that the freedom to practice, freedom to operate is there for your products. So let's take a very simple example. Let's say that person A has invented the wheel. Person B comes up with a bicycle, which is essentially using two of these wheels and helping in the mobility. Okay. So let's say that you have invented the bicycle and the patent for that wheel is also in force. Essentially, it could happen that you are infringing upon the that particular patent claim using that tire or that wheel without the license from the initial inventor. Okay, so you may have to go back to this person saying, okay, give me a license to use your wheels in this new system. So even though you have a claim for a bicycle because it is a new patented technology, you still might have to go for freedom to practice license from the prior art. So this is something which you need to be aware of. Another example, very basic example, would be something in addition to it. So the pencil, you know, is working very well on its own, but now you have added a eraser on top of it. Okay, so FTO problem will arise only when you go to the market to sell it, because anyone who is manufacturing pencils may come back and say, look, you're using my product. You have only added another improvement to it. Okay, so that improvement is fine, but if you wish to manufacture my product along with that improvement, please take a license from me. So this is something which you need to take care of. Also, FTO is something which is determined on a country to country basis. So for example, let's say that you have a patent in India where you make matters, where you sell matters too. Okay, so you have a patent in India, but not necessarily a patent in United States. Okay, and because this is a territorial right in United States, there could be something which you are infringing that IP, not necessarily in India, but in US, because that was filed in US, there's a granted patent over there. So then you need to make sure that FTO is there in all of these countries separately as well. So what are the basic considerations for ensuring your freedom to operate? First is scope out your own intellectual property. Then scope out the intellectual property of your competitors and sort of try to identify the degree of overlap. You also will need to look at enforceable IP. That is, what is it that is actually enforced? So enforce, I mean only the granted patents, which are alive or which have not completed 20 years of their lifetime. Now jurisdiction also comes in play, that you only need to look at India if you're looking for freedom to operate in India. Okay, background, foreground IP also makes a huge difference, because there could be something which they have filed, or there could be something which is in pipeline, which is filed, published, or not published, but it is not granted yet. So there is a potential bomb on which you're sitting, which could be granted anyway. So you need to have freedom to operate with respect to that as well. Some contractual obligations, again, clarity of ownership, that is who owns the IP, that also allows you to ascertain that you have freedom to operate it. So for example, you have filed it as in your own name. Once the company forms, if the company is using it from you as well as two other people who have been named as the applicants, and the company has not taken any written authority to go ahead and use this invention. So there is no freedom to operate it, even if it has been named in all three of your colleagues' names. Okay, one day if one of the colleague decides that no, I don't wish for the company to use it, then there could be some contractual obligations which will occur. So it is always good to have contracts in place, and licensing assignment agreements should be executed. Also know how patent, trade secrets, there's certain amount of overlap or blurring when it comes to these. You need to identify what is it exactly that your patent is claiming, and what is it that is your know-how, what are your trade secrets. Also, some important formalities, regulatory approvals, NOCs, agreements, these also need to be in place so that freedom to operate is there. Okay, so essentially your workable IP will be the IP for which you have freedom to operate. So start scoping out these details right from day one so that you have a better understanding as you go ahead developing the product. So once you have developed a non-infringing product, ideally it should be a complete FTO. So you should be able to use the copyright, the software part of it, the hardware part of it, the shape of it, the trademark, as well as the patented technology of it. So once you have all this, only then you would be able to achieve a non-infringing product. So how do you clear the obstacles in FTO? I know that most of the spaces are very crowded. So it is not like you're the first one to come up with a system. There would be hundreds of others who would have thought of or come to something which is closer. Okay, and maybe yours is a technical improvement, a technological advancement. But so it is a very crowded space. So ensuring absolute FTO is very difficult in these days. So what you could do is, if you're sort of you have an idea that okay, this is something which I am infringing upon, think of maybe in licensing that technology, maybe purchasing sort of getting an assignment of that IP right if it is from maybe someone who's not going to be using it or competitively commercially using it. Okay, cross licensing is something which we come across a lot in pharmaceutical industry, because everyone is using R&D resources, and there are certain overlaps in technology. So most of the pharma companies would come into a cross licensing agreement coming together, wherein they would have a license for each one of them to use it for specific applications. Inventing around is also something which you can look at. If there is a product which has been patented, there is a process which has been patented, maybe try to work out a different process to arrive at that product, and then you would have a process patent on it. Patent pools are also something which you could consider. There could be another sort of a consortium of organizations, startups, which are essentially working in the same area as yours. So you could maybe have an agreement wherein you pull in all your patents and then each one gets right to use it for certain applications. So those things are something which you could work out. Now, many of the times, this is something which is very important. Government schemes for IP in India, because Make in India has sort of become very important now. So there are some schemes which are available, and of course there are many guidelines and many parameters on which it will be difficult to judge whether you would qualify for it or not. But go have a look. These are some of the schemes which you could possibly apply for, and some of them would give you monetary assistance for your granted patents. There could be some others which will help you in filing of the patents. There'll be some more which will actually reimburse you for your granted international patents. So each of these have a different mandate. Each of these have a different set of guidelines. Also, requirements are different. But essentially, these are some things which you could have a look at. So scheme for building awareness on IPR, it is essentially any individual also can file, startup MSME also can file. And this is for giving you sort of assistance once you have a granted patent either in India or in the foreign country. So those could be looked at. Scheme for facilitating startups. SIPP is essentially to help startups. So there's a reduction of fee as compared to companies. Only 50% is what you need to pay, and there would be facilitators who would sort of help you with filing this IP, and they would be then reimbursed by the patent office. There's also SIP EIT, and these schemes particularly by certain states. So if you are in one of these states, do look them up. And also Karnataka, I think, is not mentioned in this, but Karnataka government also has a lot of these schemes going on. Have a look at that as well. There are other schemes like DST, DBT. They have these funding schemes, and funding calls open up every year. So if you apply and if you get one of these grants, typically one small amount of that range which comes your way is actually reserved for filing and maintenance of patent applications, okay, and intellectual property rights. So you could also sort of apply for those funding schemes and then get funded for the patent application. So technology development program, PRISM, is something which you could have a look at. There are also certain awards which are granted for patents in India. So National IP Award is something which is every year the patent office comes up with this award, and it is essentially given to those startups or organizations who have filed the best intellectual property or who have gotten a grant on the best intellectual property in various categories. So have a look. You can file for that Managing IP Award or CII Industrial Intellectual Property Award. So these awards are also something which you could maybe go have a look at. So I think it's that's all I would like to share with you today. And these are some of the basic important considerations which you should keep in mind right from the start or day one of your startup journey. Because if finally you come to a stage where intellectual property is an asset, it's something which you have sort of consistently built upon, then I'm sure the commercial gains or the importance of it will be much more as compared to if you have not actually given it a good deal of thought. Okay, many of the companies, let's say Biocon or many other big MNCs, also depend a lot on these strategies for IP. So, so with that thought, I think I'll leave you today. And if there are any questions, I would like to answer. Maybe we can take up a few questions.
Yes, Neha, thanks a lot. So there are a few questions from the startups. If you can check the chat box.
Let me just, okay, yeah.
Yes. So first question is from Kamal. If you can start from there.
I have a question. Okay. Published. We have to pay examination fee or not? I think there's one question which is from Karthik.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, after the application published, we have to pay examination fee or not. Okay, so once the application gets published, you have to file a request for examination, and request for examination has certain fees associated with it. So those need to be paid. And once it gets examined, if there is a grant for it, then your maintenance fees would set in. So right from the first year of filing, you have to then start paying a patent maintenance fee. So those fees will kick in right after the application has been granted. But before that, after it gets published, you only have to pay the examination fee. Of course, if there is early publication, then there is a separate fee which is associated with it. I think that answers his question. Moving on, there's another one from Ganesh Chari. So, what is the cost of filing provisional application? Can I put a provisional application myself, or do I need to go through patent agent only? Okay, the cost of filing provisional application, if you're looking at the government fees, it is quite nominal. You can do it yourself also. There's no need, it's not compulsory that you have to have a patent agent to do it for you. And all these steps which I have sort of told you about, you can do that. The if you're filing it online, the fees would be rupees 1600. If you're filing it with paper, it would be a little bit more, around 1750. So can there be another question is from um, Anushkrit Goel. So can there be multiple applicants in an application? If yes, can there be a partial ownership agreement between different parties? Yes, there can be multiple applicants in an application, and so the number of applicants can vary. And second one is there a partial ownership agreement between different parties? Yes. So in India, if you have filed as two applicants, each of the applicants would get 50% ownership rights on it. So unless and until you don't have sort of a consent of both of you cannot go ahead and license it out to someone else or sell it out to someone else. Okay. On the and it is assumed that both of you have 50% ownership to it. Having said that, if there is an agreement on the contrary to it, saying that person A would have 80% rights and person B would have only 20% rights, then that sort of a partial ownership agreement, that is what I think you meant by this, will be, that is okay. So you can go ahead and have an agreement to that effect. So, okay. So I think we have time for Manveen, maybe two more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Is that okay? Manveen?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I'm saying, yeah, it's fine. We can take 2, 3 questions and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. Okay. Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's one more. What is the procedure for exclusive transfer of a patent? The procedure is simple. If you have a granted application, or even you have a patent application, if you wish to exclusively transfer it, just get it executed as an agreement. Get it executed on stamp paper with notarization, and that is how it works. So it is essentially just a transfer agreement. And he's again asked me another question: can published patent be transferred to a company which is not granted? Yes, that application can be transferred, and of course, once it gets granted, only after that all the rights come into force. So if the company still wants that, I need an option to, so essentially you could have an options agreement wherein the application option has been given to the company, and once it gets granted, the company can either come back and do a licensing or a assignment, or it could waive off its right. So that sort of arrangement could be done. Manveen, there's one more question from Abhishek Taneja. So I think apply for a brand identity, not clear on the steps. Okay, if you wish to apply for brand identity or a brand, you could go ahead with a trademark application. Trademarks are essentially your logos, your taglines, or something. So what you're doing to help your branding. Okay, and that can be filed at the trademark office. And you could go through. There's a simple application which needs to be filed along with a particular description of your trademark, and then just have a look at Patent Office India website, Trademark Office India, www.ipindia.nic.in, and so that would be the first step for you. So I think that's about
Sneha,
it. Yeah.
just last question. Kamal is asking, like, if we had an idea of mechanical tool and we want to manufacture and sell that tool in India, but that tool is already present somewhere in the world,
Okay.
then can they go ahead with the production part or not?
Can you repeat the question, Manveen? There was some lag.
So they have like idea of a mechanical tool
Okay.
that they wanted to manufacture and sell in India,
Right.
but the tool is present somewhere outside India in any other country already. It is. So it is possible they can go ahead with the production.
See, there's no yes or no answer to this. The reason is that they need to make sure that there is no patent granted in India. Okay. If there is a patent in force which is granted in India for that mechanical tool, which is there in the other countries, then of course they need to take a license if it is exactly the same tool which they are manufacturing. Okay. However, if it is not there, if that granted patent is not there in India, or it is not alive, or then it is okay. Then maybe they will have the freedom to operate it. So manufacture, sell it. But that so see, this is something for which they need to take a exclusive search for, and certain that such kind of encumbrances are not there. Okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are done
Okay.
with the
So
questions. And
right. So maybe we can wrap it
starter,
up
then
there.
maybe they will connect you.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Neha.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing the details on patent and other details. Thanks a lot for sparing your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And take care, all of you. And it has always been a pleasure to be associated.
You too.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Neha.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Thanks, all startups. Thanks for joining.